The Hut Near the Bog is a subscription and advert-free podcast. Please help us keep it that way by either donating or purchasing products from our store. Or alternatively, you can give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Just follow the link in the description below. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Hut Near the Bog. Aidan Harte is the man behind the now famous, or perhaps notorious, Púca of Ennistymon. In this episode, we sit down to discuss the furore around the Púca. Before that, however, we hear about his work as a sculptor and his fascination with Irish folklore. Aidan, thanks a million for coming on the Hut Near the Bog. Can you start by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Aidan Harte and I'm a sculptor. I live and work in Dublin. I've been at it sculpting for about 10 years or more. I studied in the Florence Academy of Art, and before that I was an animator in Kilkenny in the Studio Cartoon Saloon, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I also I write. I'm also a published writer. So, but I guess the occasion for me coming on here is the furore around my most recent sculpture, my first public sculpture, the Púca of Ennistymon.
I suppose, yeah. So we'll get into the discussion around the Púca of Ennistymon, but I'm kind of interested in exploring sculpting first, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no problem.
And also I'm interested in exploring your interest in Irish folklore and how that features in your work. So, I mean, what is, like, I suppose to start with, like, how does sculpting differ from other forms of art, Aidan?
Well, I mean, it's related. I mean, clearly it's related. I mean, if you're the fundamental of all art, whether you're doing sculpture, fine art paintings, murals, animation, whatever, it's all about drawing. So that's the fundamental skill. It's the ability to recreate what you see and put an interpretation on it. So they all have that in common. And then sculpture is, well, it's one of the oldest arts. I mean, you can go to the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna and see the Venus there. It's this prehistoric kind of Earth Mother character, about, not more than a foot high, but it's this little buxom stone carved model. And so, like, from the very earliest days of civilization and before that, people were carving things, probably wood to begin with, but obviously that hasn't survived as well as the stone. What I do is bronze, so that's I make it in clay, and then we make a mold, and then we cast it. And what's appealing for me with sculpture is that it's at once very simple and incredibly complex, because the simplicity comes from the fact that you can't really do elaborate storytelling or multi-figure pieces. I mean, there are multi-figure pieces. For instance, the Laocoon, the Hellenic sculpture of based on a story from the Trojan War, but they're few and far between. I mean, it's a lovely sculpture, but more typically would be your standing figure, one man, one woman, or something like David or a Venus. And so it's kind of got a simplicity and purity that appeals to me. And it also is, I mean, it's kind of the most, it seems a very human art, because typically you're representing a figure, and the viewer looking at it, they have it takes up space in the same way the viewer takes up space. So it's not just an intellectual relationship you might have with a painting or a miniature or something. A sculpture is invading your territory, as it were. It's something with physicality and presence. And then the type of sculpture I would do is it's figurative sculpture. So that's the type of classical sculpture that I studied in Florence. And to do that, we studied anatomy, and we studied drawing very carefully. We did écorché, which is the French word for flayed. So we would have built a little model of the skeleton, and then onto that skeleton we would have put, the deep musculature, and then onto that the superficial muscles. And in that way, you're getting a very deep understanding of anatomy, which is kind of it's very helpful if you're trying to do figurative sculpture, because it's tricky. You want it to be very convincing, and like even if you're not that interested in art or design, you certainly know what looks like a human being or not. I mean, that's something we're all expert on. We can tell if a face is slightly off, or if an arm is too long or a leg is too short. So it's a difficult thing to do well, and so that's kind of challenging and satisfying when you pull it off. Of course, the kind of sculpture I make is it's, I suppose, on the more fantastical side of things. I tend to be drawn towards mythological subjects, because maybe that I don't know, appeals to the storyteller in me. But so I've done things like my first collection, for instance, after I came back from Italy, was based on Dante's Inferno, and which is a very fantastical epic poem. But the characters I was drawn to create were the people that Dante and Virgil encountered, the Minotaur, the Centaur, the Harpies, and they're all what they have in common is that they're half human, half man.
Do you think there's a sort of this question is coming from complete naivety, so forgive my ignorance, but obviously it's a highly complex and skilled art, but is there something more primal about sculpture, in the sense that, I mean, we from earliest times, and even from our earliest experiences, we're always doing something with our hands, or shaping, playing with mud, or something like that, that there's something that's kind of brings you into closer proximity with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I mean, I would say so, but then I probably am quite biased. But I do think that it's probably it's almost certainly something people have been doing for as long as they've been walking upright, and before even then, because we know this from the artifacts we've found, but also and the cave paintings, they seem to have these figures that are these half man, half animal things. They're called Tarantohope in by the anthropologist or whatever, which just means half man, or kind of shapeshifter or something like that. So in the famous French cave with the paintings, the Les Trois Frères cave, that has this figure called the sorcerer, and he's a half man, half elk kind of creature. He's kind of crouched over. He seems to have a furry pelt, but he has the horns of an elk. So that would I say that's very primal. I think when man became conscious, one of the first things they became conscious about is, this is purely speculative, so treat it as such, but they became conscious of their mortality, but they also became conscious of the fact that they were like the animals, but yet somehow different. And that's something we struggle with today. I mean, we're animals that can write string quartets and put satellites around the earth, but we still sometimes the red mist descends and we find ourselves taken over, and we still talk like that. We say a man is a bull, or a headstrong man is a bull, or a weakling is a mouse. I mean, it's a kind of duality that's in us all that this kind of art, yes, I think, expresses very well. And then, I would say sculpture is kind of primal. I mean, there's an urge to create in all of us. to have children or whatever. I mean, Michelangelo said, because he didn't have children, he said, I have no children, but I have my sculptures, and they harry me continuously. So it's that urge to create something that takes up space and has a personality. And I mean, it sounds silly, but like when I know a sculpture is done, it's like I work on it for whatever months, and there's a stage where you're just building up clay on an armature, so you're just packing it on, and then you're trying to make it look something like what you might have done preparatory drawings or something like that. And then there comes a stage when there's a personality in the room other than yourself, and it's sort of it has its own charisma or its own presence, its own menace or like humor, whatever. And that's the stage that usually I walk away from the sculpture, because then it's become something. And then those are the most powerful sculptures. I think they seem to have a presence of their own. I mean, there's the famous Greek myth of Pygmalion, the sculptor who falls in love with his own sculpture, and I think she comes alive, and they get happily married ever after. But that conveys something that I think was obvious to the Greeks and the Romans and stuff, that great statuary has a personality, has an essence, something of life. Although obviously it's an illusion, but it's a powerful one.
Mm. Well, it mightn't be an illusion. It depends on what viewpoints are, in terms of, like, if you get into the Irish folklore and the idea of the kind of connection between tin veils of worlds and spirits inhabiting things, then depending on your perspective, it might not be an illusion. But it's very interesting nonetheless. And I think about music, and I think about writing even, and I think, like, you have to learn a whole. Obviously, I'm not for 1 second. Don't doubt that it's a really complex. You have to learn the anatomy of the body, and you have to learn so much to get to the level that you're at. But at that most primal level, I can pick up something, I can sculpt. But, like, in order to write, I need to learn how to write. In order to make music, I need to learn how to well, maybe music it might be. But anyway, that's just some thoughts that are coming to my head. So I just find it's like something that connects you. It must be something that connects you at that most primal level. And again, it's not to get too philosophical, but like that kind of fundamental nature of being, and whatever being is, but surely that's something that connects you to it. If any of the arts connect you, surely sculpting would, because of that connection with it.
Well, I vacillate myself on that subject. Sometimes I'm very matter of fact, and it's a thing I'm creating, and then other times I think there's a sort of spooky presence in the room with me, and it depends, I guess, what hour of night it is and how what I'm feeling like. But I mean, like writers like Stephen King, for example, he often talks about that there's a kind of ideal platonic form of the book, and as you're rewriting it, you're basically trying to get to that pre-existing state, and your editing is not. It seems to be you creating something, but actually you're creating something that exists. And I mean, that's just a way of looking at it, and it might not be the case. Probably isn't, but it does seem to be the case sometimes. And it's an odd kind of it's an intellectual process, but it's also an emotional process. I would say sculpting, and much like any other art form.
That's a very interesting use of Plato's philosophy there, to kind of propelling oneself to that ideal form which exists in a different plane of or in true reality, one would say. But no, very interesting. And the thing about it now is we could get really philosophical, and I don't want to do that, because it'll go down all kinds of rabbit holes. But I think we'll move back into the kind of the structure of the questions. But I see that you've been that you're well known in artist circles, and for example, Darragh O'Brien recently was tweeting support of you. So just proves that you've been around a while. But this has really propelled you to into the national consciousness. And I think the idea of why Irish folklore, has that always been something of an interest, or has it been something you've just recently come into in terms of something as a focus for your work?
No, in fairness, it would be a lifelong interest. I mean, you'd encounter them when you're a school kid growing up in Ireland. I mean, I don't know if it's still the case, but we certainly learned about Cuchulainn and Fionn McCool and stuff. Now that's mythology, and folklore, as you know, is kind of the disreputable cousin of mythology. Like, mythology is august and Olympian and kind of beautifully metaphorical, but folklore is just old yarns you tell around the fire. And so it's a nice and human form of myth. So it's interesting. I kind of compare it to traditional Irish music, which has standard forms, reels, jigs, etc. But within that, you get variation, and you get artists like Sean-Nós artists who put their own stamp on it. And I think storytelling works like that, because with folklore you're going to find, for example, more or less the same story about the Púca or the Banshee in, say, Kildare or County Cork, and the only difference really is the place names that have been put on it, or the kind of the gloss that the writer might be putting onto it. And I think it's a nice thing, and it connects people to their locale. And it also, particularly much like Irish music, it reflects something of the particular genius of the Irish people, their sense of humour, their sense of whimsy, their sense of the black humour of the average Irishman. I mean, that comes out in the best folklore, I think.
Mm. No, it's very interesting, and this furore is around the Púca of Ennistymon. Mm. So I wonder, for the benefit of people who don't know what a Púca is, would you mind explaining?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people don't know. A surprising amount of people don't know what a Púca is, and one of the, however this particular controversy pans out, one of the nice things about it is that a character who is one of the iconic characters of Irish folklore, like the Banshee, like the leprechaun, or the Fardarg, that has been kind of relatively forgotten. Now he's back with a bang, and I think that's kind of nice, because he is a big part of the tradition. If you look at the 19th century stuff, I mean, with folklore, as you know, it begins as a kind of an oral tradition, and then it gets sort of recorded began to be collected and recorded in the early 19th century and before then. And you see comparable things happening all around Europe. So the Brothers Grimm are doing the same in Germany, and other people in Scandinavia are doing the same thing, and Italians are as well. And so, like, for instance, there's a chap called T. Crofton Croker, and he'd be before Douglas Hyde and William Butler Yeats. And I have open in front of me here just a one-page description of the Púca. So this is from 1825. I'll just read it out if I could. It's difficult to obtain any correct notions of this spirit. There is something indefinite and obscure about it. He's talking about the Púca. People recollect it imperfectly, like a dream, even though they have experienced the strongest sensations. Yet the Púca is palpable to the touch. It appears as a black horse, an eagle, a bat, and compels the man with whom it has got possession, and who is incapable of making any resistance, to go through various adventures in a short time. It hurries with him over precipices, carries him up into the moon, and down to the bottom of the sea. If a building falls in, it is imputed to the Púca. There are numerous precipices and rocky caverns called Púca caves, that's Fuaile Púca, even a waterfall formed by the Liffey in the county of Wicklow. He has derived this waterfall has derived its name from the spirit. The people prohibit their children from eating blackberries after Michaelmas. I guess that's Samhain, kind of after harvest, and ascribe the decay of that fruit, which takes place after that season, to the Púca. So that's just a one-page thing in this croaker collection. And then you find later on there's more stories from William Butler Yeats, from Douglas Hyde, from Lady Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, and they kind of put flesh on that bone, because the earlier traditions, he's kind of like Pan, or this kind of nature spirit. So he's just, I don't know, what would you call him? Sort of a kind of animist figure who's, he's quite an ambiguous figure. He seems to be a bit of a troublemaker, kind of like like a Hermes or something like that. But then later on, he becomes he's kind of fleshed out in the later stories. So and then again, like in the 20th century, people like Flann O'Brien would have done their own versions of it. So essentially, he's a shapeshifter, and he appears in various different guises. But the horse would be one of his his favorite forms to take. And the idea that he takes people and takes them on trips is characteristic of him. So in many of the stories, he would find bump into a fellow who's coming home from the pub, maybe by a graveyard or something like that, and he encounters the Púca, and they enter into conversation, and it's kind of it depends how that conversation goes, whether the fella makes his fortune or he's never heard of again. And one of the things in some of the traditions is that if you have a pair of spurs on you, you can tame the Púca, and that goes back to this old idea that the fairies can stand. The one thing they can't stand is iron. So, like, there's an old pishog about carrying an iron nail on your person, and you'll never fall into a fairy ring or anything like that.
Very interesting. And we have a Púca around my part of the world as well, and but it's a fascinating character of folklore, I think. Anyway, funny enough, and maybe it's a bit of a tangent, but my uncle, he's gone now, God rest his soul, but Lackeen Castle is the name of the castle where the Púca is associated with in our locality. And in the old days, there used to be a cinema there's 3 villages in the parish. One is Lura, the other is Rackcabbin, and the third is Redwood. And in Lura there was a cinema, and he always told a story that he was coming home from the cinema. They used to cycle over to the cinema, so you'd have to pass Lackeen Castle, and in that locality. And he was coming home one evening, and late at night, and he said he looked on top of a gate, and there was like this massive black creature sitting on top of the gate. And he said he didn't know whether it was real or not, but he said he cycled like there was no tomorrow up the hill and back home. And he said it was one of the things that frightened the life out of him. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's a good yarn either way. And then, of course, it's funny he never referred to the Púca, but of course that's what the association is within that area. So that's why I suppose it goes back to that kind of thing of those, like, I don't know whether there is or there isn't or whatever. It's kind of the thing I've come across in my kind of philosophical endeavors is that there's this great unknowing, and we don't really know either way. So let's not rule it out. And I suppose that's the best thing about folklore and mythology, is that maybe there is some truth to it, maybe there isn't. We don't know. We can be somewhat agnostic, or perhaps we can have faith in it.
And in fairness, I mean, if enough people believe something or have a tradition, it creates its own reality. For sure it does. I mean, there's every generation has its truths and its unquestioned beliefs, and like they affect us all. You know, you can't escape it. So if, like, probably your uncle, like when he was a kid, and my father had a similar encounter, believe it or not, with the Banshee, like when he was a very young kid, and you might just say, you know, it was a dark night, and he was he was up too late or something like that. But it's funny how, you know, I mean, there's not so many moving statues nowadays in Ireland, but there's still plenty of people seeing UFOs. So I mean, it's what's in your culture does affect your reality.
Mm-hmm. It's how you interpret it, isn't it? The whole structure by which we interpret our experiences. So therefore, even if it may or may not have been something that was malicious or something supernatural, but the way it's structured is the culture in which you exist. So that's the way you interpret that thing. So you're referring to UFOs or referring to, I mean, the Banshee or the Púca, you know, that's how you're going to interpret that at the experiential level. I'm interested in knowing how. I'm interested in knowing how did the Púca of Ennistymon come about? How did you end up winning that contract? I suppose, is that the word, or being awarded that contract?
Yeah. It's a public tender,
or commission, I should say.
No, it's one and the same. I mean, basically, it would be a public tender sculpture. So, it would have been like all public tenders would be advertised, and then sculptors like myself can do a proposal, and there'd be a brief describing what they want. There'd be a budget. There'd be a rough schedule, and you kind of have to meet all of those things and demonstrate some kind of capacity with previous work. And it's difficult because obviously, like someone who's done public art before, or many public commissions before, will have an advantage over those that haven't, like myself. But I'd have been pitching for these now for the last couple of years. Basically, with my sculpture, I work with a gallery in Dublin called Sol Art Gallery, and I do exhibitions every so often. And I make a body of, you know, several bronzes, and they'd be editions of 3 or 7 or 9, and we put them in and just try our luck. And it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like farming. You put your money in at the start and you see how you go. Like some editions are, some sculptures are very popular and the edition sells out. Others of them just, you know, sit on the shelf gathering dust, and you never really can tell what will work or not. But it's, you know, it's interesting because it's interesting and rewarding work because you're your own boss. But with sculpture, bronze sculpture, it's very expensive to cast. And so if I want to work at a scale, and the Púca of Ennistymon is a 2 meter tall sculpture, if I wanted to cast that, like, you know, I'd go broke trying to cast that. So you're talking, that's going to be a public commission if it's going to be anything. And the Púca of Ennistymon budget is 30,000, and that would be, you know, that would be average and maybe on the bottom end of average, because there's commissions that are 80,000 and above that. But again, like, competition for the bigger ones would be that much more keen. So this was a great opportunity for me to basically show what I could do. And it was particularly nice because they were looking for the people, the county council were trying to, they're doing up the town of Ennistymon, which had it's in the middle of, it's in Clare. It's not too far from the coast. So if you're driving to the Cliffs of Moher or something like that, you might go through it. But basically, this was I made the proposal, and the brief was to do something that was going to attract people to Ennistymon, and they wanted something that would be iconic. So something that could go on postcards, and people would be drawn to stop and take a photograph with it, because Ennistymon has lots of nice restaurants and cafes, and if you stop and take a photograph, you might stop and eat a meal there and go around the shops and the craft shops and see what's on offer. And so that was the idea, and it was great because, like many public sculptures, they'd be very public sculpture tenders. They'd be very carefully delineated. So, like, for example, the Roger Casement one in Dunleary last year like that, they literally asked for a statue of Roger Casement. But with this one, it was, they were inviting artists to come up with their own idea, like, of what they thought would be good. And the brief mentioned that Ennistymon had a horse fair, and I knew from just, I've been interested in the Púca for years, so I knew that there was plenty of stories from Clare about the Púca, and then I thought that would be a nice thing to do, and I made a bozetta, which is like a little version of the sculpture, and that would be like about 60 centimeters tall. And that was the one, like a photograph of that is what I proposed to the commissioner. So they really knew what they were getting. And what I did once I won the commission is essentially basically I recreated that 2 meters tall, which is, you know, it's not straightforward, because once you make something bigger, all your problems become magnified. You can do a little, you can get away with lots of things in a sketch, but on a big scale in a public sculpture, you really need to be sure it's going to work from every angle. And that's kind of the beauty about sculpture. It's not like a picture where it looks nice from one angle. With a sculpture, ideally it should look good from whatever angle you're looking at it, which is not to say that it doesn't have a dominant point of view. Like, for example, Michelangelo's David looks best from the front, there's no doubt about it, but if you go around it, it still looks interesting from those other points of view. But that would be the case with the Púca. He looks strongest from one point of view, but he looks interesting from pretty much every point of view.
And how did the furore start then? What's the story behind that? How did we get to the point where they had suspended the project, Clare County Council?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a little bit of a mystery to me, because it's the county council were very good in that they let me get on with the work. So basically, for the last during the last lockdown, I was working away, happy as Larry, doing the sculpture, and all I was thinking about was making it as interesting as it could be, and you know, that's as it should be. And then in the background, I guess something went awry, basically, because I don't know, there seems to be like some kind of I don't know, issues between the council and the local people. I know there was trouble with the that corner where it's supposed to go, going back years before this commission. So I don't know, I think there was, passions were high or something, and then somebody got wind that they were making a Púca, and then people were asking what's a Púca, and then somebody did I suppose a Google search, and anytime you do a Google search, you're going to find, you know, it's like if you look up I've got a rash on my hand, so I'm look it up on Google, and it'll be like you've 3 months to live kind of job. So I think it was a bit like that, because some of the descriptions of the Púca have that he's an evil spirit, but that isn't the case really. He's definitely no saint, but he's not like always giving bad luck, because he gives good luck as much as he gives bad luck. He's more like Pan, a nature spirit, so he's just a rowdy character, and it depends what way he takes you. And so I think people thought, and then there was a petition done, and the priest got involved, and he was saying that, well, I basically, I don't put words in his mouth, but it was reported in the paper that himself and the local senator and TD were saying it was you know, a sinister creation and a pagan idol and all this kind of crack. And that was it. That was when it became, basically the county council told me, when was it, the start of the last month, that this petition had come in, and that we'd have to pause it for a month while it was dealt with. And that sounded fair enough, because, you know, I mean, it was just an unforeseen thing. And then the priest had this sermon, and then the Irish Independent had a story about it, and RT had a story about it, and this neither of these mentioned my name, but they had a picture, like an internal document of a mock-up of the sculpture printed. And so this was a bit galling because, you know, it was my work being talked about and I wasn't mentioned, and my family and friends obviously knew that it was my work, and it was like, it was if, I don't know, the report wasn't very, it wasn't very clear about what was happening. So I said to the council, well, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a funny story at some level. It's unusual in modern Ireland that it sounds like something out of the 1950s. So I said to the council.
But I mean, I suppose sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go on.
Just so I clarify my point there. The clickbait, I suppose, is not that the story itself is clickbait, but the way it's represented is that the national broadcasters hadn't reached out to the artists, got their side of the story, and then it's also a story that's going to, it's just something, it's an intriguing story. So what I mean is they kind of probably got it out as quickly as possible, or knew that it was something that was going to spark interest, and therefore it's clickbait in that sense, but not the story itself, because I think the story itself tells us something far. It shines a light on things that are currently happening in Irish society. So not the story, not the actual story, but the initial story is what I mean. So just, well,
I mean, it definitely does have a funny side to it, because I mean, the statue he's an unusual looking fella. So you wouldn't see statues like it very often, this horse-headed man dancing a jig. And it just, I mean, I could see it from the point of view of journalists that it's too good to resist. But the thing on RTE gave the wrong impression, I think, because like they had Eddie Lennon, the folklorist from Clare, and he was saying quite accurately that there is no Ennistymon version of the Púca folktale, and that is true. But like there's plenty around in neighbouring towns in Clare, but no one in Ennistymon. And that Eddie was just saying that as a matter of record, like he knows better than anyone that there's the Pool of Púca in the Burren, and there's the Lame on Púca Moor and the Wedge Tomb in Carafúca. So there's plenty of Púca stories from Clare. But the story was like it had just been dropped from, you know, planet Mars onto this unsuspecting town. But really, like the public tender was done in the best, like it was they followed best practice, the county council. There was a committee formed, which would have, you know, your usual committee would have the arts officer, local engineer, or the engineer looking after it, some kind of like a businessman or figure of standing in the community, an artist maybe from outside, those kind of things. So it was done like in the same way pretty much any public tender statue is done in contemporary Ireland. No different, and actually a little bit better, because you can even find the site visit on YouTube where the engineer talks about what they're looking for. And I mean, it was one of the better ones you'll see, because sometimes the site visits are very uninformative. But they had a good idea of what they wanted. They wanted something that was going to attract people into the town. And whatever you say about the Púca, it certainly attracted attention. In the last month, it was like covered by, you know, the Sunday Times, the Irish edition of the Daily Mail, the Irish Independent did lots of stories about it. So it's and then there was the Euro News, where they described the Púca as starting an ideological war, which might be a bit over the top, but it's got like it's captured people's attention. There's a fella in Kilkenny who wrote a kind of ballad, a kind of protest song supporting the Púca. There's a cultural historian, I think she is, in the University of Limerick, doing a study on the phenomenon, because this doesn't happen very often, that ordinary people are talking about folklore. And so she's doing a study on it. And I mean, when it came up that it mightn't go up in Ennistymon, there was other towns from around Ireland. Like I got like offers from Kildare and Kerry and Dublin and Kilkenny. I mean, some of those were just, you know, people being nice on Twitter, but there was serious offers too from Epic Museum in Dublin and the Hunt Museum in Limerick. But it's presumably and I hope it'll go ahead. At the moment, that 1 month delay has been extended to a delay over the summer. We're going to revisit in autumn and see what's what. And I'm just hoping that, I don't know, the people set against it see that it isn't there isn't anything sinister behind it. And if they look into the public tender process, they'll see that it wasn't anything wildly different than any other public tender in Ireland. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes now.
Well, it's certainly a fascinating story, and I think it's when I saw it first reported, I actually saw it on RTE, and when I first saw it, I said that's a beautiful structure. And one way it was described was it's grotesque. And
yeah,
I
thought that was
the first thought that came to my mind is when.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. So, but my view was, I thought it was beautiful, but I thought there was a grotesqueness to it. But that's exactly that beauty is in that grotesqueness. That's exactly the whole point. And even if you think about it in terms of the word escapes me, but if we think about the fairies in folklore as well, and fairies aren't necessarily evil spirits either. They're far more reflective of human beings. I mean, or of humans that we can. Sometimes we can be in a bad mood. Sometimes we can be in a good mood. Sometimes we can be good. Sometimes we can be bad. And it's not black and white. That's what the Púca and the fairies. That's what they show us. That there is this kind of grotesqueness to existence, and that these figures reflect that. And I thought that when I saw that this term of grotesqueness being used in a way that was to almost beat the artist being yourself, I thought, well, actually, you've missed the whole point, in my view. I mean, what that structure is about. Surely,
I mean, it was used as a pejorative, which struck me as funny, because the first person to describe my work as grotesque was myself. I've been doing it for years, basically, because it's some of the, because when I was studying in Florence, I used to go to in the mornings I used to go jogging, and I'd go across the river. So I would go through the Plaza, or the Piazza della Signora, the main place where the Uffizi is, where all the tourists gather during summer, and where the replica of David's statue is, and the old palazzo there. But in that square, there's tourists admiring artwork, and the sculptures they're admiring, the subject matter of those sculptures are really quite they're quite dark. I mean, there's Hercules clubbing a senator to death. There's Perseus holding the head of Medusa. There's beside David, there's Donatello's statue of Judith beheading Hosserphenes, the general. So these are not vanilla sculptures, and it's not necessarily a good thing if a statue is all sweetness and light. Like some of the most powerful sculptures and artworks, they have that darkness. And I mean, in opera, Don Giovanni, and in literature, Moby Dick, they have this kind of quality of turbulentness. There's the Italian word turbulata, which is what Michelangelo's sculpture was always described as having, and it's this kind of ferocious intensity. And if you look at a horse, there's a reason a horse has been such a popular subject for sculpture. It's because the horse it's got the power of a bull, but it's got this kind of unearthly grace as well that you don't find in any other animal. And so it's this kind of combination of delicacy and extreme kind of savage power that you find in the horses in the Elgin marbles. And that's basically what I was looking at with the Púca, trying to capture some of that intensity. But it's a double-edged sword then, because it's quite an intense work of art.
So basically, I suppose I'm just thinking about this because it's brought some ideas to mind. So of course, I mean, that's what I like about Irish folklore. What I like about the fairies, what I like about the Púca is that kind of something that's reflective of a darker nature, but also that not necessarily darker. That it can also be jovial and friendly and can be positive as well. But and that's exactly why I thought when I read the article and saw the statue, I said you just completely missed the point. But of course, what does it say about kind of? It just kind of says something. I think it says something about the idea that we sell to like people in America, Irish Americans, that it's Ireland is the land of leprechauns and Guinness and maybe like to some degree that like something like the Púca, which is really pure Irish culture and something that is reflective of Irish culture and our folklore, and it's the fact that it isn't this kind of shamrocks and pints of Guinness and pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, and maybe people are fearful of that and the image that it sends out about their particular community. But actually, really what it does is it's more in line with the reality of existence, of being human and being situated within a world and having to live and all the experiences that go along with that. And it's also very enlightening and illuminating. That's what I would say. But you see where I'm coming from that particular point of view, that what it shines a light on the fear in people's mind that they're fearful of they're not falling into that kind of overly romanticized view of Ireland, but actually something that's more authentic and a more authentic experience of Ireland, surely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely it does. I mean, what I thought with the whole furore was that it kind of it brought to light this idea that we've kind of gentrified our wild folklore, that we're either completely dismissive of it or ignorant of it, or we have this kind of rosy tinted view of it. So it's not a good place to be, because it's better than that. It's more interesting than that. And but like that's I think the one positive thing that came out of this, that people came across these stories that aren't these twee kind of Darby O'Gill kind of stories. They found out about the Púca, and it's got this element of wit and menace and the devil may care kind of whimsy that they wouldn't have necessarily come across before. I mean, there's a tradition with Irish sculpture. You have for example, the GPO. You have Oliver Shepherd's Cuchulainn statue, and that at the start, the foundation of the state, all those legends, they were the legend of Cuchulainn and the Táin Cúla. They were very much in people's mind. I mean, probably the intelligentsia more so than the average person. But they were working as symbols should work, and by that I mean they had contemporary resonance, and they were also kind of rooted in the tradition. But then time passed, and some people began to kind of back away from that tradition. And the last kind of gasp of it, I suppose, was Oisin Kelly, the fella who did Jim Larkin on O'Connell Street again. So he did the Mad Milkman, the Chariots of Fire, the chap with the chariot, and he did the Children of Lear. And so he's really making excellent sculptures about drawing from Irish mythology. But then after that, it's a blank. There's people would rather set fire to themselves than do a story from Irish folklore. And it's this kind of cultural cringe. I think I mean, this will sound terribly pretentious, but I think it's kind of like a kind of post-colonial thing, that we're sort of, we're a little bit ashamed or something about our traditions. And so we're just, we kind of mock them before other people can mock them on us. And it's just got old hat at this stage, I think. Now, I think people are coming to it fresh. I certainly am coming to it fresh, and I always I always found it an enthralling tradition, and so that's what I'm trying to do with this fella now, and other work that I do would be in that kind of tradition, but a lot of it's been drawing on Greek mythology and things like that.
I think something that comes to my mind is, you know, I agree totally the idea of the kind of the post-colonial attitudes towards our own culture and tradition, and almost that shaking it off during the Celtic Tiger period of, as in, it's a new Ireland, modern Ireland. But I think like the millennial generation, I don't know whether you're a millennial or not, but I think I fall somewhere within it as a millennial. But and perhaps younger again, there seems to be a movement back towards that kind of embracing of our own culture. Like I see it in Irish music. I remember when I was a kid, and like Irish music was just, it wasn't something you did. And my partner, she's a fiddle player, and she's a brilliant fiddle player. And it was only for, she's brilliant, but she's but I'm biased, of course. But she says that only for her mother that she would have stopped playing the fiddle, and like she loves music. Like music is her life, and it helps her balance out as a person. It helps her, you know, it's one of those things that helps her cope with, you know, the struggle of life. And I find that like I've gone back into, I found my way in through her into the trad scene. I'd be a traditional singer, and I'd sing in the Shannon style, but in English, because I'm not a Gaeilgeoir, unfortunately. But the point I'm trying to make is there's also a kind of movement now in our folklore tradition, in our culture generally, back towards this stuff. And do we associate that kind of movement back towards? Do we associate that movement back towards that kind of that reinvigoration of our culture, of our traditions, and interpreting that in a new way? Do we associate that with, you know, people who have a certain level of education, who have maybe travelled or have left Ireland? Is it part of the liberal elite? And is that kind of those old attitudes towards our folklore, the fear of the Púca, for example, is that something that we associate with the kind of maybe the Generation Z or Generation Z or Y, I can't remember which generation it is, but you know, I think the kind of the people who became wealthy during the Celtic Tiger, effectively, and the people who kind of who had to shake off those shackles of the shillelagh and the leprechaun, and then had to almost disown it themselves. And is it that there's two conflicting viewpoints, and do we associate one with a particular generation in Ireland and another with the other? Does that make sense, or do you think there's something different happening?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to it. I mean, as you say, music, I think, is the front runner. I mean, the way bands like Lunasa and Keela and Martin Hayes and whatever, going back to Christy Moore, the way they have kept the tradition, one foot in the past, one foot in the present. I mean, that's the exemplar of good art as far as I'm concerned. But it hasn't really been the case in the visual arts, because for various reasons. But yeah, I don't know. It's the strange thing is that I would say there's a whole middle, there's one whole generation that almost knows nothing about folklore and doesn't want to know anything about it. And then maybe there's the old people who would have heard it growing up, and then maybe young people getting to know it. But then there's a whole sort of ocean of incomprehension and uninterest, which is fine. You know, people can do what they want, but I think that's what a lot of the antagonism towards the Púca of Ennistymon is coming from. Like people who they mightn't even heard of it before, you know. They heard somebody describing it as this, you know, pagan idol or whatever, and they said, well, I don't want that in my place, and they, without understanding that, yes, you know, the Púca's been around in Clare for, you know, longer than you and me.
Yeah, well, it's interesting again, but it also sheds light on so like I'm thinking about this one, but basically I think it tells us something about you know, obviously there's the west of Ireland, the rural Ireland is still rural Ireland is fast becoming a new place, in the sense that fast becoming a new place in the sense that because of, I suppose, COVID has probably worked as a catalyst, but it's brought a lot of people back to their home places.
Yes.
Like, for example, I wouldn't be in rural Ireland only for COVID. I'd be gone. But, and I know I have a lot of connections down in Clare because of, there's on two sides, but I see Doolin and Ennistymon, North Clare is a hive of artistry, of really interesting people. But there's also still that other side of Ireland, which is, Catholic Ireland and Ireland we have to respect, and I fully respect that side of Ireland. But is there an element of the pagan idol? I mean, is it a pagan idol? Is it something that people worship? It's not something people are worshipping. It's a respect and an acknowledgement of culture. So it's too easy to kind of caricature something as a pagan idol because it doesn't fit within a particular framework of thinking, which is probably still strongest in the kind of rural Ireland. Is that something that makes sense? I think that's perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, you don't hear as much talk about it being bad luck or anti-Christian since the story went national. The protest has moved on to other objections, but yeah, I think it's just a red herring. I don't think it's anything to do with the people just getting the wrong end of the stick. And maybe it there probably is a sort of culture clash, and maybe that culture clash makes people suspicious, and they in Clare, like pretty much everywhere else in the west of Ireland, there's people coming from outside moving in and gradually changing the town and bringing new life and new ideas to it. And some people welcome that, some people resent it, and maybe the Púca was seen as another interloper. I hope enough people think that isn't the case, that we can go ahead with it, but we'll see.
So where is it at now, Aidan? What's the story with the statue itself, and what needs to be done? How do people support this without interfering, or without the people of Ennistymon feeling like the whole country's interfering in what is rightly their own business?
Yeah.
Is there a way to do that?
You don't want to shove something down somebody's throat if they don't want it. And I mean, probably the way it is, if the Púca doesn't go up there, there's enough interest elsewhere that he'll go up somewhere. So it's not the end of the world. But if you have relatives down in Clare, they'll tell you that the protesters by no means speak for all of Clare. I mean, they speak for themselves and they're entitled to do it, but they don't speak for Ennistymon as a whole. So people can tell it's on pause now, and the idea is sort of they're looking for the Clare County Council is looking to know what people think. There's a petition in against it, but then since the story went national, the County Council has been getting lots of support for the Púca. That's come from outside, obviously, overwhelmingly, but it's also come from Clare, thank God, and from people in Ennistymon. When the whole story broke to us, people with cafes and jewellery shops and health food shops from Ennistymon, and they were saying, we're happy to have it here. So it's not, that's fine, sure. I mean, like, art people don't need to have a unanimous opinion about art, but it shouldn't necessarily be the case that we choose things by kind of like X factor show of hands. I don't think anyone will be pleased with that, with the products that they'll get, because they might agree that they don't like something, but it's very hard for them all to agree what they like. And the fact is, with art, you often change your opinion. Your first impression might not be the one that you're left with over time, and you might come to appreciate a thing. And also, if a thing is bringing lots of tourists to your town, well, you might see that it's well, you mightn't think it's the greatest thing ever. You can see the benefit of it to your neighbours. So that there is that. I mean, the worry would be that the objection is the objectors get the way, but I think that might be that, like, if they win, Ennistymon could lose. So it's like it's not helping anyone necessarily.
It's bound. but it's bound to lose now, because the reality of it is, if they, like, I would say this, and I mean, the reality of it is that the whole, like, it's not just the statue now, but the whole storm around it. That's part of its story now, you know, and that's something that will attract tourists in as well. They'll be like, where's this statue that caused this storm? You know, that's part of the narrative now. That's part of something that will bring people to see that statue. So
no, if
people are surely bound to lose.
No, I wouldn't say. Hopefully it'll be a win-win for everybody. I mean, because I certainly don't take it personally. I hope other people don't either. I mean, it's and I do think people's worries were genuine, so they thought this was, you know, something it wasn't, and that's fair enough. Like, I've been at pains to try and tell people what it is about, so you know, they don't have to like it, but they'll know now it's nothing sinister, it's not anti-Christian or anything like that. It's just a sort of piece of Celtic whimsy from my perspective. But if people want to help, just drop a short email to Clare County Council. That's customerservice@clarecoco.ie, and just tell them that next time you're in Clare, you want to rub the Púca's toe and get your 3 wishes. Or, you know, if you're from Clare, tell them that he's welcome there. That's it really. That would help, and sure, we'll see where it goes.
Hopefully. I've one last question for you, Aidan. We always ask this question at the end of every discussion we have. I mean, there seems to me that there's you've obviously have a vast amount of experience. You've studied in Florence, and you're a published novelist and an artist as well as a sculptor, but also this story in particular. So, what is there any wisdom that you would like to share with the listeners of the Hut Near the Bog, and what is it? And there can be more than one bit of wisdom if you want.
Well, I don't think I can manage two. I don't know if it's wisdom, but I mean, the thing that has been borne in on me with this controversy, and like it's I mean, I've been trying to keep a good attitude about it, but it's not particularly pleasant. But the thing that's kept me smiling is the fact that I know that it's a good sculpture, as good a sculpture as I can make, and it's the subject matter is the type of subject matter that I am drawn to. So if you look at my back catalogue, you'll see similar creatures like the Púca. You'll see minotaurs and whatnot, and because of that, it's not like what sometimes with these public commissions, you're putting in an idea that, you know, you mightn't like as much, and you're just hoping to you know, do a good job with it technically. Like, say, a sculpture of a person or something like that. You mightn't be that interested in the person, but you say, I could execute a good sculpture with that. But with the Púca, it's the thing I like most. That it's a type of art I like most, and I think I do the best. So even though it's kind of in one sense a professional disaster that it's ran into this wall of controversy, it's also gratifying because it's the subject matter is something that I can stand over. And so I suppose I'd only say to people that it's kind of trite, but do what you like, not what you think is going to please people. Like, if the first thing you have to do is do something that you're genuinely interested, and if you do that, the interest of other people will follow. I mean, you might divide opinion, as I have done here, but you'll definitely get people who enjoy what you're doing and see the value of it.
Aidan, thanks so much for coming on the Hut Near the Bog.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hi folks, we really hope you enjoyed that episode. To support the erection of the Púca in Ennistymon, please send an email to Clare County Council at customerservices@clarecoco.ie. That's customerservices@clarecoco.ie. And please consider supporting us by either donating or purchasing some products from our store. Just follow the link in the description. Thank you. Bye.